Hello everyone, good afternoon. Today I'd like to discuss why I feel vigilante justice is often lacking in its ability to provide punitive justice. Firstly, I'd like to start this by saying that I believe in a rehabilitative model for government structures and the legal system. I also believe in a legal system that is based around consent, but in this case I am playing the devil's advocate and assuming that retributive or punitive justice, as well as the death penalty, are appropriate legal measures, which, as I have said before, I definitely prefer rehabilitative and consent-based legal systems. I believe that they work the best, but that is an issue for another video. Many times on the internet, I encounter people advocating for vigilante methods of exacting justice. And I feel that if vigilante justice was intended to work, it could possibly function in a small society, in a small group. For example, my explanation for why we feel this way from an anthropological perspective is that according to Anthropology 101 at WSU, Washington State University, a class that I took and thoroughly enjoyed, humans for most of history have been living in small groups of bands. Most people are actually evolutionarily accustomed to interact with 5 to 25 people. We have yet to accommodate ourselves to dealing with hundreds and thousands of people, let alone having a multi-billion individual global society, because that is what we have now. It is a completely unnatural phenomenon. In such a society, I feel that vigilante justice would have been much more efficient, because in almost any crime there would have been substantial witnesses, everyone would have known, everyone would have felt the effects. At least it is more likely. It would be harder for people to do things and conceal their actions and hide, which people, when they are accused of justice, will do. It will be much easier for people to directly witness such crimes. And if the crime was only witnessed by a small few, then that person would be immediately very suspect, and society would take precautions to keep an eye on him, if not exile him anyway, just for safety. And in such a society, if a person was meted out with vigilante justice, it would incur some kind of social risk for the people enacting and exacting this vigilante justice. If the person was too harsh in their administration, then the rest of the group would exact vigilante justice on him as well. So there was an incentive for people to be fair, and probably because of their close ties to the person would probably be more lenient and try to be fair. There would be a close emotional attachment between people, which would make people unlikely to dole out unnecessarily harsh punishments, but in the event that they did over some kind of grievance, the other members of the group would be able to more effectively police that situation. This is difficult, and I feel it would be difficult to say the same thing about our modern contemporary society. Most of the time, the jury is intentionally selected for their unbiased partiality, and for their unbiased partialhood in terms of a court case or legal scenario. You want an unbiased jury. You want people who don't have a bias, who don't know the person, or who are a stranger, and who have neutral opinions. And so that may be why this emotional reaction seems to occur in society, because for most of history that may have very well been the way that disputes were handled in human societies of 5 to 25 people. Now let us discuss in contemporary times how vigilante justice works. Usually when people discuss vigilante justice, they imagine some kind of horrible transgression that is a cry for humanity and must be punished no matter what. It is insufficient to say that they got off the hook by being proven innocent in court. That's not enough. The fact that the police were inefficient, the fact that the justice system was inefficient at convicting someone they know is guilty for a crime that must be punished. That is the way people usually imagine such a scenario. And they often envision either some great mob that is formed to exact this vigilante justice, to show up at his house and exact vengeance. Usually the crime that is committed oftentimes is worthy of death. Very, very few people will call for vigilante justice in any situation that is not considered especially egregious and must be punished. Those same people would consider vigilante justice petty for minor issues, such as someone dropping a penny and someone else picking it up, and you show up at his house and break down his door. So usually it is an egregious violation against contemporary taboos. And they theoretically employ the concept of a lynch mob, or they may theoretically employ the concept of a hired assassin. Those are the two most common methods that they ascribe. Either they themselves will be the assassin, or they will hire an assassin, or they will show up with a bunch of people who break his house, break his door down and kill him. That is usually the way people imagine vigilante justice occurring. Let us discuss the scenario. Let's pick an egregious offense. Usually, I have heard this offense, this kind of vigilante justice being prescribed to people who commit forceful acts of violent, unconsensual coitus. But I'm worried to say the word, but you know what I'm talking about. It starts with R and it rhymes with great. And people often use this example as something that necessitates vigilante justice. Let us examine this case legally. If someone is guilty of this crime, then these people show up to their house and kill this person or assassinate him, and justice has been served. That is how people who argue for vigilante justice see it. And that is a very idealistic explanation, but realistically this is something that would rarely play out for a few reasons. The first of which is, even if he was guilty, I have difficulty believing that the aggrieved family of the people who, for example, if I had a son and my son was murdered because he raped someone, I would not consider that just. Whether it is just or not, I would feel that what occurred was an injustice, regardless of whether he did it or not. I would feel that it was an act outside of the law, and that they caused significant harm to him. And for example, if they broke down his door, well, it might be a little silly to think about such financial issues, but would they repay me? They did enact vigilante justice. So in a way, justice was served. Remember, I believe in rehabilitation, but we are playing devil's advocate here. But what about the damage to my door, to my property, in them doing so? What about the damage to my reputation? Would I therefore be compensated for that? Would the mob compensate me for that? If the assassin shot through the window, would I be then compensated for that? It sounds terrible to think about finances when someone precious to me has lost their life, but vigilante justice often, even when correctly, in quotation marks, is enacted, it will always result in collateral damage. Who is responsible for that collateral damage? Am I, simply by my relation to that person, to suffer because of the actions of that person? And oftentimes the answer I am given when I ask this is yes. Well, That's point one for bloodlust right there. It really seems the motivation is bloodlust rather than an effort to exact justice in the world or provide order or closure. But then the issue is, I may not know that my son is guilty of this. It is very possible that the person's family will not believe it, and they will also wish to seek vigilante justice. What proof do we have that such a thing occurred? What proof do they have that such a thing occurred? In the end, it simply boils down to subjective interpretations, and whoever's family is able to exert the most violence on the other. And you end up with a system of feuds, big family feuds. And it will be difficult for actual justice to be served in a way that is satisfactory to all parties. The second part of this issue is, let us say, for example, in the instance of the rape allegation. Excuse me, there I went and said it. Let's see what happens. In the instance of a rape allegation, let's say that the mob comes to the door and breaks the door down, they start shooting at him and he runs and he grabs a note from off his dresser. And this note is a signed document stating that, signed by the person who was raped, showing that this person consented to sex. And that it was actually a false allegation, and that this person consented to sex because this document was signed. Of course, let me point out, most people would consider a document of signed sexual consent to be an unnecessarily high level of formality for such a situation. So people would accept that vernacularly. Lay people would accept that as proof of some kind of that consent occurred. But I'd like to remind you that this actually legally is actually evidence towards the fact that rape occurred, not against it. This a signed consent form is actually evidence that rape occurred, not that it didn't occur, because we'll discuss that in another video. But let us say that the rapist presents this signed, the accused rapist presents this signed consent form. Will the mob that has fired bullets at him and somewhat beaten him and broken down his door, will they retreat? I think that they will continue to persecute him and murder him. I think they will murder him because at this point, if it is a mob of 30 people or 25 people or something, all of those people now are criminally liable for attempted murder. I find it difficult to believe that they will sit there and let you bring them a box of let the accused rapist bring them a box of juice and cookies while he is on the telephone calling the police to come and arrest all of these attempted murderers. They will murder him. If they were willing to murder him before, if they were willing to kill him to exact vigilante justice without being absolutely sure that it occurred, because let's be real here, unless you were actually there and you were witnessing it yourself personally, there is very little way you can actually be sure. And you are taking someone's life. So if a person was taking someone, maybe one person was a witness, but if 25, 30 people were there, if it was a mob, that person would not all of those people are sure that the rape occurred. They are just going off of someone's word, which they may believe to be true because they were family, but that's not because it's evidence-based. It's simply based upon mutual bonds between people. And in that scenario, they were willing to kill him without that evidence. They would be willing to kill him. I propose they would be willing to kill him. At that point, when they risk legal action, they will just kill him anyway. They will just kill him and try to conceal it. The fact that he didn't do it would be unimpressive for them. If they already shot at him, if they already beat him, if they already fractured his bones, but he just pulls out this signed consent form proving that there was consent, they would just do it anyway. They wouldn't, not all 30 of them would go to prison because not all 30 would just go to prison because they attempted murder. And let us say that they kill him anyway. Let us say that they kill him, that he doesn't pull out this letter, and they kill him. And then they discover that actually someone else did it, or that the person who made the accusation was not telling the truth, which this is why I believe that we need a rehabilitative model, because I feel that the focus should be on protecting and helping the victims instead of punishing the persecuting the actors of such heinous things. Let us say that they discover that for one reason or another the man that they killed is innocent. Is anyone going to turn themselves in? They themselves are criminals now, right? They murdered someone. They went and they murdered someone. Will they each and all of them be punished? Will they each face the death penalty for what they did? And let us say that they don't turn themselves in. Because we know they won't turn themselves in, but maybe one of them has a conscience. What if that person turns himself in? Or wants to turn themselves in? I think you will have a greater chance that the rest of the mob will murder him as well, rather than all of them would turn themselves in. Now let us discuss what might happen in the instance of the lone gunman or the assassin. Oftentimes people portray themselves as the sniper, or as hiring some super James Bond looking sniper, something like that. And in that case, the situation is the same. That sniper personally probably doesn't know anything. What does he know that you don't know? He didn't see it, so the issue is the same thing. And if you are hiring a professional, you're hiring a criminal. You are contributing to a criminal act. Maybe in this one instance, that criminal is doing what you believe is right, but you are abiding a criminal in criminal activities. Are you not therefore also liable to that criminal deserves to be killed for killing people according to this logic of vigilante justice? That criminal is a murderer and therefore he deserves to be killed, but instead of you killing him, you're paying him to kill someone else. So why aren't you killing him? Point 2 for bloodlust. The reason you're okay with him not being killed is because he's going to kill someone that you want killed. So the issue is not in restoring a sense of justice to the world, the issue is bloodlust. So in these scenarios, the common denominator is often always bloodlust instead of retributive justice. All of the problems are still there. But if you are hiring people and criminals to do these things, you are also feeding a dark underbelly where murder becomes commercialized on the black market. You are doing something very bad, very bad. If a rapist deserves vigilante justice, one could argue that you deserve vigilante justice too. Well, you in the third person. I apologize. I'm not referring to you yourself. I'm speaking about a figurative third person party. That person who hires the hitman to kill a rapist also is worthy of vigilante justice because he is contributing to a criminal underbelly and cooperating and colluding with actual murderers, with murderers. And once again, if the person is innocent, will the hitman turn themselves in? Will the person who hired the hitman turn themselves in? I have difficulty believing they will, because both will make short work of the other pretty soon, if such a thing were to possibly be leaked. None of them want to go to prison. None of them want to go to face the death penalty. But let us say that the person who does it themselves does it. This issue, the person does it themselves instead of hiring a hitman. Well, in that case, what if the person's family is there when you attempt to enact this vigilante justice and they defend them? That no trial happened, no due process occurred. Maybe they are even ignorant and naive of the entire situation. If you kill them and kill someone else in the process of defending them, are you not also guilty of vigilante justice? The fact that a horrible crime happened does not excuse every and all other methods and means you may take to exact this justice. The justice, that is the net justice, the net the net punitive element that is in the world becomes a negative, because you have killed several innocents at this point. And then you may say, what if I am sure it happened and I go and do it anyway and I get away with it? Well, that is an ideal situation. You're creating an idealistic situation in your mind that really is very seldom the reality. If you know that and you do that, well, if you know that they did it, and how do you know? That is again the issue. How do you know? How do you know? Because you saw it? Well, did you walk in on it? Maybe it was consensual up to a point. Maybe, unless you were there from the beginning to the end, which we'll talk about how pornography could actually be consensual, because it's a subject that it goes into, as well as to how you could actually make sure that porn or sex or any kind of sexual activity could actually be truly 100% legally protectable. But I say it is unlikely that you know 100%. Maybe you know 95%, maybe you know 98%, but there is still that shred of doubt. There is always going to be that shred of doubt unless you were there from the beginning of that person's interaction with the other person until the end. It is very difficult. And let me remind you, we are using the vernacular definition of rape. Because as I said in a previous video, 99% of sex is rape, according to affirmative consent anyway. So I really do find it difficult to believe that someone is sure that such a thing occurred. But I saw another instance of another instance. Let's move away from the issue of rape. In this case, I saw a video about some laws in I think it was Brazil, where it became legal to run over drug dealers in public. It became legal to hit not drug dealers, carjackers with your car. And this made me start thinking, how would you actually know that there was a drug deal going on? The videos that I saw as part of this video, which I recommend that you stay away from because it is a little violent. But if one does these things, how do they know that they were being carjacked? In the videos, I had to check several times that this person was actually carjacking or attempting to use violence. But all I saw was a car hitting some people. And I had to look back again and again. I wonder to what degree this is effective. I'd be very curious into the statistics as to how well this was effective, or what punishments were in place for people who erroneously did so. Then there is the issue of what constitutes rape. Because, for example, when people think of rape, they think of someone raping someone at gunpoint and forcing them to have sex and threatening them with violence directly. But that is very rare. Most rape, like I said, according to affirmative consent, that kind of rape really is pretty uncommon. It does happen, and it is heinous. But that particular kind of rape is uncommon. Is that the rape we're talking about here? Maybe some people would say it is, but maybe others don't. Maybe other things happened. People have for example, it is rape to have sex with someone who is intoxicated, and people would consider that it is rape to have sex with someone who is blacked out drunk. But what if the person had previously given consent? That what if the person had an arrangement with their rapist that they want to get drunk and that they give permission to have sex with them when they are passed out? So even if the vigilante saw it happen, he may not be aware of the entire context. So even if he saw it, there is still some shred of doubt, some shred of uncertainty. But most people would agree that having sex with someone who is blacked out is a form of rape. But what about if they have had a lot to drink? Just a lot to drink. A lot of people have drunk sex. At school, I hear about it all the time. In fact, I see minors going to parties where alcohol is consumed and then bragging about being passed around. It happens. Everyone participates in these things. Well, except me, but you know how it works with pointing fingers. Society has a lot of issues with these kinds of scenarios. But obviously everyone thinks that that is rape, but why does it go on at schools and universities? Why does it occur? Why do people have a glass of wine before having sex? Why do people hook up at bars? Well, they're all committing rape. So when does it become rape? When the person is blacked out, when the person is slurring their speech, when the person consumed any alcohol? I personally believe any alcohol. Any kind of inebriating substance that is drank impairs the person's ability to consent and therefore is in some way rape. Absolutely. But most people would disagree with that. Most people would think that I am being very nitpicky. The law agrees with me. The law disagrees with anyone else. The law does say that alcohol, having sex with someone who is drunk, is rape. Drunk depends what you mean by drunk, but it's considered rape legally. The definition of drunk is subjective. And then the legal punishment for rape is not always the death penalty. So what gives the vigilante the right to commit a murder as retribution for a rape if the actual legal punishment for it is not death? Well, is that appropriate? The person might say yes, because actually the law is too soft. Well, that is you making a subjective value claim, and you are therefore stepping outside of the law and committing a murder. You might believe in that case, the vigilante may believe that that is worth it. But then why is it not worth it in other scenarios, such as in preventing abortions, or in causing abortions, or in killing someone because they stole your wallet, or your phone, or your car, or your Pikachu plushie or something? Well, who decides what if you have that right? Why don't other people have that right? Many people think that as you can see on the internet, many people believe that the just punishment for someone who even disagrees with them is violence. And yet, when we take a step back from that bloodlust, we can realize that that's actually probably a less than optimal solution. So those are the basic issues with vigilante justice that I see. That it's very difficult to prove that it occurred, that the vigilantes themselves are not willing to subject themselves to the same justice that they met out to other people, and that they take a very subjective license in determining what an appropriate punishment would be. Those are the main issues that I have with the idea of vigilante justice, and I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you have any other arguments for how vigilante justice could work in our society? I encourage you all to embrace a life of loving your fellow neighbor and loving people and forgiving and having mercy. I do encourage you to practice that in all areas of your life. God bless you all. I love you all. Have a nice day. Be safe.